What's up, good people? Welcome back to Matter of Fact. Glad to have you. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already done so. If you have, I appreciate you. Again, with this channel, I look to potentially say some things that will allow you to look within yourself and decipher if there are any changes or tweaks or adjustments that need to be made within self. I'm not here to tell you you're right or wrong, but I am here again in an effort to allow you to look inside of yourself and see if there's anything that you want to tweak or change. Before we get started on today's topic, which is perspective, I wanted to make clear that your position on life is important. Is your position on life a position of expectancy and or entitlement? Or is it a position of graciousness and gratefulness? And then as well, if you know anything about life, life is about alternatives, or better known as possibilities. So what that looks like is things change. And as things change, more times than not, we have to make adjustments on our end in order to keep up with the changes or in order not to fall behind. But anyway, let's get to it. So again, we're going to talk about perspective. It's a Latin root word that means to look through, or as I like to put it, essentially your point of view or the lens that your mental process looks through as you decipher what's transpiring and how you're going to handle it. So people will be led to believe that there's only one or 2 point of views. You generally either have a negative Nancy or you have a positive Peter. However, there are at least a half a dozen approaches to perspective. So the first one is the psychodynamic. That emphasizes on the role of the unconscious mind, early childhood experiences, as well as interpersonal relationships. And the reality is that these things never essentially leave your mind. They just get stored in your unconscious part of your mind. Now, the thing about unconsciousness is that essentially it means that you're not woke or you're asleep. The other thing about the psychodynamic perspective is that these people generally identify with all primal and unconscious desires. So they may, on one end, do some things that seem basic, but on the other end, do some things that don't really make sense to you. And honestly, it probably doesn't make sense to them because it's their unconscious mind that's assisting with the outcome of how they handle things. These people as well deal with the ego. Now, the ego deals with the demands of the real world. So what that looks like is this might be a person who has a Maybach but lives in an apartment complex. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, the ego will have one looking to appear a certain way. They care more about status symbols than anything else and how they appear to other people. And then lastly, you have the superego, which manages all internalized moral standards and ideals. So again, these people have moral standards and ideals, but they've internalized them. And they allow that ego and that subconscious to dictate how they handle situations. Okay? Then we have the behavioral perspective. Behavioral focuses on learned behaviors, observed behaviors, or behaviors that they've experienced themselves. It's pretty straightforward. Now, these are the type of people where a situation transpires and they resort back to what they know, saw, or came to understand. So what this may look like is you have a young lady who grew up with both parents and the parents would fight. Every time they fought, mom would say, "Dad, get out." Dad would leave for a week. So now this same young lady gets older, gets in her own relationship, and then she gets into it with her mate. And her first reaction is to say, "Leave." Now, what she does is she checks out on her current reality, or knowing that emotionally as a child, seeing the parents fight and dad leave was hurtful. they will dismiss that and go strictly to what they know, what they saw, what they observed, or what they were taught. And again, so her reaction would be, get out. Even deep down, she's knowing that it's not right, her reaction will be to get out. Then we have cognitive. Cognitive essentially is a thinker. Those are ones that focus on the mental process, the memory, thinking, problem solving, language, and decision making. Essentially the informational process. So these are people who consider all things as they make a decision based around what's going on. So they're generally logical. Their reaction will be in sync with whatever's taking place, if that makes sense to you. So they're generally realistic, logical people. Okay? Then you have cross-cultural. A cross-cultural perspective is more so derived of a larger magnitude. It deals with people who embrace the culture and the stereotypes and everything that comes along with their culture. So a study was done and it showed that America, when they're put in a test to work together, it was found that the Americans don't work as hard when they're in a team. So what that'll look like is, let's say we have 5 independent fingers. These are 5 independent Americans, and their goal is to close together, or to close essentially and make a fist. Now, what happens with Americans is that they'll be paying so much attention to what's going on around them, they lose sight of the task at hand. So they may all eventually get closed, but it's not uniformed. It just happens when it happens. However, with the Chinese, the study has shown that they work better together. So what that'll look like is, instead of all of them focus on each as an individual, they'll focus on the total picture. And then so those fingers will close all together in sync and create that fist. So again, these are people who, again, their responses will be largely based on what they're accustomed to, what they're used to, almost status quo. So you can almost expect a certain response out of these type of people. Then we have evolutionary. Evolutionary, these people deal with the theory of evolution, or the physical process. The mental process exists to serve its evolutionary process, or evolutionary purpose, that aids in the human survival and reproduction. So now these people, their main focus is self-preservation. They're going to do what they have to do to ensure that they're okay, or they come out of a situation unscathed. AKA, these are the people that'll tell on you with no hesitation. What is it, Karen, that always calls the police on people when she feels like something is not right? I'm willing to bet you Karen is an evolutional speaker, because Karen puts Karen first, and Karen is the only person that Karen cares about. And then lastly, we have the humanistic approach. The humanistic approach is the role and motivation in thoughts, behavior, self-actualization are essential. They focus on what drives humans to grow and to change. They develop personal potential. Now, self-actualization is the drive or need to present in a way to everyone else. And they also accept themselves. They accept others as they are. They lack inhibition and are able to enjoy themselves. They live a guilt-free life. So these are people who are usually comfortable with themselves. They're comfortable in their own skin, and they're generally okay with others as well. These are people that don't classify people as weird, or don't have a problem dealing with people that others deem are weird. They take everybody as they are. These type of thinkers, again, they find humor in any situation. They get satisfaction out of the present moment, so they're living in the moment and what's happening. They understand that they need to gain a sense of fulfillment. They have a tendency to feel secure and unashamed of who they are. They're often spontaneous and natural, and they are task-centered. So again, these are people where if something was to happen, their perspective would allow them to stay balanced or even killed. They wouldn't get too high or too low. Mainly because they understand that whatever's taking place is only taking place for this moment. And what I've learned in life is that things happen, but the most important thing is what happens next. So again, I challenge you, if you heard something that I've described and it relates to you and you're not 100% happy with how you perceive or how you deal with things and how they come to you, I advise you to look into it and dig deep and see that there are different ways to handle different situations and find out what works best for you. There is no right or wrong way in any of the ways that I read. It may sound that way, but essentially it's about finding what works best for you. Because again, the purpose of my videos is to challenge you to look inside of yourself and decipher if anything needs to change for the better. If it doesn't, I'm so happy for you. And what I would like you to do is comment about some of the practices that you use or some of the ways that you think, and hopefully other people can read them and take those on, and they can begin to live a more positive and upbeat life. I appreciate you for stopping by. Thank you for listening to me ramble on. Like, comment, subscribe if you already haven't done so. If you have, I'm extremely gracious. Until the next time, just a matter of fact.